Darnell Whitaker was mopping floors at a school that once called him unfit for honors, until a calculus problem on the whiteboard caught his eye, and he solved it in seconds. The next morning, he's dragged into the principal's office, accused of stealing test answers he never saw. Security footage shows him tutoring anonymously at night, but the school calls it trespassing. Now a teacher's been suspended, a student expelled, and Darnell, he's gone missing. What they buried in a janitor's closet could blow open a decades-old conspiracy. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The night shift always began the same way for Darnell Whitaker, with the hollow echo of his own footsteps against the polished linoleum floors that seemed to reflect everything except his existence. Crestwood High School slept under dimmed lights and locked doors, but this was when Darnell felt most awake. The mop handle was familiar in his hands, a tool he wielded with quiet precision, yet every sweep of his arm felt like a reminder of a future stolen before it ever began. 16 years old, wearing a uniform meant to erase rather than identify him, he moved like someone used to being unseen. He had mastered invisibility long before he mastered calculus. Inside that building, most students didn't know his name. Teachers rarely addressed him unless it was about restocking bleach or wiping gum from desks. He blended into the background the way the school seemed to prefer its black students. Silent, compliant, present only when needed. But Darnell's mind was louder than the world allowed him to be. Numbers never hushed him. Variables never questioned his worth. Equations didn't ask him to speak less, smile more, or justify his presence. There had been a moment, years earlier, when a teacher whispered he was gifted. The word felt like a promise back then. Something shiny, something hopeful. But the system didn't like gifted black boys, unless they came with disclaimers, exceptions, or entertainment value. The school had once placed him in the track meant for students bound for advanced placement and scholarship pathways. Then came the glitch, a mysterious computer error that stripped him from every one of those classes. A mistake, they claimed. Temporary. An oversight that strangely never corrected itself. No one fought for him. No one fixed it. No one checked why his name suddenly appeared among the list of students credited with custodial hours instead of academic standing. Darnell didn't tell his mother. She was already carrying too much. Double nursing shifts, hospital grief, the ache of exhaustion that settled in her bones. She believed education was still a ladder. She didn't see how theirs had already been greased. So Darnell said nothing. He kept his transcripts hidden in a drawer and took the janitorial job the school quietly offered, calling it work experience. They said it was an opportunity. They didn't say it was a ceiling, yet he accepted the mop, accepted the uniform, accepted the silence, but he did not accept the lie that this was all he could be. Each night, after wiping down cafeteria tables and scrubbing footprints from the gym floor, he found his way into empty classrooms. The air was still, smelling faintly of chalk and poster glue. Rows of untouched desks held the weight of potential he was denied. Textbooks, left open in mid-lesson, mirrored the stalled momentum of his hiss, but the whiteboards were always the most honest, marked with incomplete calculus problems from earlier periods. He stood before them like a shadowed scholar, his mind unfolding every line and curve, every limit and derivative, every proof left dangling in chalk dust. He solved them not to be praised, but to remember who he was, to reclaim what the system pretended he was never meant to reach. Some nights he worked faster than the chalk could keep up. Other nights he took photos of unsolved pages and worked them later. Past midnight, lying on the thin mattress in the small bedroom he shared with his younger brother, the glow of the screen was soft, illuminating the scribbles in the notebook that never left his side. Every number written with the urgency of someone fighting time itself. It began quietly. The tutoring. A digital forum post buried beneath homework complaints and meme threads. Someone asked for help, anonymously. Darnell answered, anonymously. It became a pattern. Students struggling in calculus found detailed explanations from a faceless guide who typed with startling clarity. He never gave them the full solution. Only the path. He never used names. He never asked for thanks. He didn't think anyone would care who he was. But curiosity is inevitable. One student left a message one night, typed in rushed keystrokes. Whoever you are, thank you. You're saving me. Still, he stayed invisible. That was the only way the system let him exist without punishment. During school hours, he was a body pushing a broom. After hours, he was their silent mentor. The same students who ignored him during the day, unknowingly depended on him at night. It was a quiet justice, a private rebellion, a truth held between equations, yet one person did notice him. Logan Hayes, a junior with grades collapsing under the weight of expectation, began arriving early to school. He never spoke to Darnell, not directly. He held the casual confidence of someone raised in a place where ceilings were decorative, not defining. But he began watching the way Darnell paused at the whiteboards. The way his eyes lingered on complex problems without flinching. The way he moved, not like a janitor who struggled academically, but like a thinker, a builder, a person who saw structure where others saw confusion. Several weeks passed before Logan made the connection. The same language patterns, the same method of breaking problems down, the same unusual variable substitutions. Logan had received help from the ghost tutor before, and now he recognized the voice behind the words, even if that voice never spoke. Logan didn't expose him. Not at first. But one night, long after the last teacher left, Logan returned to the classroom. He carried a folded note in his hand, small, shaky, human. He placed it gently on the desk where Darnell always left his cleaning supplies. No name, just a message. He wrote to the ghost. The one who saw math like a second language. The one who never asked for credit. The one hiding in plain sight. Thank you. You saved me. He left it there, folded once, sealed with intention. A gesture meant to honor, not reveal. A quiet act of recognition, meant for only one person. But a security camera watched everything. Hours later, Darnell entered the same room. He moved with practiced rhythm, placing fresh markers in the tray, erasing left-behind chalk dust, sweeping where no one would notice. Then he saw the note. He froze. His heartbeat stuttered. Someone knew. Someone saw him. He reached for the paper slowly, careful, almost afraid. The room felt different now. Charged. Exposed. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. Not fully. Someone had pierced the illusion. And at that exact moment, the security camera blinked. A small red light recording everything. The footage would be reviewed. Someone would see. Someone would question why a janitor was being thanked for calculus tutoring. Someone would assume something far more dangerous than brilliance. It would be enough to change everything. A security guard rewinds the footage, zooming in on Darnell's face, and calls the assistant principal before dawn. The morning light hadn't even broken through the frost-coated windows when Assistant Principal Meredith Granger leaned over her desk and hit play on the grainy surveillance footage. Her office smelled of burnt coffee and nervous energy, the kind that clung to early hours and bureaucratic messes. The school's IT supervisor had flagged the clip for her attention, noting unusual activity in one of the classrooms well past student hours. The moment the video started rolling, her brows tightened.
There was the boy.
Darnell Whitaker, in his gray janitor uniform, picking up what appeared to be a piece of paper from a desk. He didn't shove it into his pocket with guilt or dart away like someone hiding something. No. He unfolded it slowly, read it, stood still, then looked up, not at the camera but toward the ceiling as if searching for air. But Granger didn't see that stillness as contemplation. She saw a black teen caught in a white student's classroom, after hours, holding something not his. Her mind didn't go to tutoring. It never occurred to her that a janitor could be reading a thank you note, let alone earning one. Her mind went where it was trained to go. Theft, breach of privacy, academic dishonesty. She picked up the phone and dialed the principal, already rehearsing a summary that cast Darnell not as a misunderstood genius, but a potential problem. She used phrases like boundary overstep and possible access to sensitive material. She noted that the student whose classroom it was, Logan Hayes, had top-tier college prospects, and any disruption to that record would reflect poorly on the school. Darnell was summoned before first period. He entered the office quietly, wiping his hands on the cloth he kept tucked in his back pocket. His eyes flickered toward the coffee machine in the corner, then toward the closed door. Ms. Granger sat straight, professional, polite, the kind of polite that's colder than cruelty. I need you to explain why you were in room 214 last night. She began without preamble. I clean room 214 every Tuesday and Thursday night, Darnell answered, his voice low steady. She tapped her fingernail against the desk. You were seen picking something up, possibly personal property left by a student. That's not part of your job, is it? He didn't answer. Darnell, I need to ask, Did you access any academic materials, student work, passwords, test documents? Still, silence. Because how could he say what it really was? A thank you note for tutoring. Tutoring he gave without permission. Tutoring that, if exposed, might help a student, but would surely destroy him. I just cleaned the room, he finally said, a half-truth meant to protect everyone involved. Granger leaned back. Disappointment, real or rehearsed, softening her voice. We want to trust all our staff, Darnell, but sometimes when students or faculty feel uncomfortable, we have to take steps. Uncomfortable. His voice cracked at the edge of the word. We'll need to pause your custodial hours until this is resolved. It's not disciplinary, just protocol. Protocol. That word sounded like cement. She dismissed him with a stiff nod. No eye contact. No follow-up questions. No real curiosity. Outside the office, Mr. Hensley stood quietly near the attendance kiosk. He'd seen the boy come in. He'd seen the same boy for months, working harder than any teen should have to exist. The veteran had always kept a respectful distance, but that morning something itched in his gut. He saw Darnell walk out of the office with his shoulders a little lower, his fists clenched at his sides, holding in something too heavy for words. Mr. Hensley waited until the hallway cleared. Then he asked Granger if he could take a look at the footage himself, citing security verification. She waved him off, already typing an email to the district office. Inside the dim security room, Hensley reviewed the same clip, but where Granger saw suspicion, he saw pause. Where she saw criminality, he saw careful hands. Where she saw trespass, he saw respect. And more importantly, he saw the paper. He paused the video, rewound it, watched again. Then, driven by instinct, he pulled a log from the IT department showing internet activity from school laptops. He'd long been a believer in paper trails. It was a habit from his days in uniform, where tracking movement meant understanding intention. One device, an older district-issued laptop, showed late-night login activity routed through the school's Wi-Fi. The user accessed math forums and digital tutoring platforms regularly. The browser history showed calculus videos uploaded from a proxy account. In the IP address? It pointed directly to a janitor's closet. Now his instincts turned from curiosity to concern. He waited until lunch, then quietly approached Darnell in the staff hallway, where lunch trays rattled and gossip buzzed louder than school bells. He pulled him aside with the ease of someone who knew how to command space without threatening it. You want to tell me why a school laptop has been tutoring half the junior class from a janitor's closet? He asked, not accusing, just asking. Darnell froze. For a moment, he debated whether to lie, to deny, to retreat. But something about the way Hensley spoke, not like a superior but like someone who wanted to understand, made him pause. I just wanted to help, Darnell finally said. That laptop's supposed to be for inventory, Hensley murmured. But you've been using it to teach calculus. I didn't think anyone would believe me if I told them who I was. You're not in trouble, Hensley said. But you're not safe either. Not here. Not if this story spins the wrong way. Darnell looked at the floor. I didn't cheat. I didn't steal anything. I know. Silence hung between them. Then Hensley made a decision, quiet but certain. Let me see what you've been doing. The real stuff. Together they returned to the closet. Hidden behind old disinfectant bottles and reams of paper towels was a small desk. On it the school laptop hummed quietly. Folders labeled chain rule visual, integration trick method, and word problems rewired populated the desktop. Dozens of videos. Hundreds of solved equations. Hensley clicked through one. Darnell's voice narrated over screen recordings, walking students step by step through complex math problems, pausing with patient emphasis, offering encouragement in moments where even teachers faltered. There was no name, no face, just clarity. It was undeniable. You've been running a one-man tutoring program in here. I didn't mean to get in trouble. You're not. Yet. Hensley sat back. They're gonna come after this. Not just you. This shakes things. If the wrong people think the janitor's smarter than the teachers, they'll erase me. They'll try. That night, Hensley returns to his office, logs back into the tutoring portal, and discovers a message left by someone else. It reads, I know who you are. You need to shut this down before someone gets hurt. The door didn't creak when it opened, but it felt like it should have. Like some kind of cinematic gateway into a secret life. Mr. Hensley stood at the threshold of the janitor's closet, though calling it that now felt almost insulting. What he saw wasn't a storage space, it was a shrine to something sacred, intelligence denied but not destroyed. On the back wall, a poster of Einstein hung crooked, taped into place between peeling paint and a forgotten fire evacuation chart. The air smelled of disinfectant and something older, like used paperbacks and late nights. Shelves that once held cleaning supplies now cradled worn textbooks, frayed notebooks, and stacks of loose graph paper scribbled edge to edge with integrals, vectors, and theoretical models far beyond high school curriculum. In the middle of it all sat a dented folding chair and a milk crate-turned desk, hosting the old school-issued laptop. The screen glowed dimly, open to a paused tutorial video titled Limits and Real-Life Problems, explained like you're 5. A black teen's voice guided the viewer with calm, articulate precision. Not flashy, not academic, just smart, just real. Hensley stepped further in, ducking his broad frame under a low-ceiling pipe, careful not to knock over a hanging broom. "Darnell," he said softly, eyes still scanning the walls. "This is something else." The boy didn't look up from his spot on the floor, where he was correcting a graph drawn on a laminated placemat with a dry erase marker. His hand moved like muscle memory, like every line was a familiar scar. He didn't smile. He didn't panic. He just kept working. "I didn't do anything wrong," Darnell said finally. "Not really." "I didn't say you did," Hensley replied. "But I need to understand why you've built a classroom inside a closet." Darnell put the marker down, his shoulders still tight, voice edged with quiet defiance. "Because no one gave me one anywhere else." The words hung in the air, unflinching, too honest to dilute. "I kept getting pushed out of everything. Advanced math, honors, all of it. Even when I asked, even when my mom came up here, they said my attitude wasn't a fit, that I didn't engage like a high achiever. Whatever that means." Hensley crouched down slowly, knees popping, elbows resting on his thighs. "So you started teaching yourself." "I had to. No one else was going to." A pause. Then Logan posted on that student board, asking for help with derivatives. I already had stuff written up, so I made a dummy account. Figured if they knew who it was, they wouldn't take it seriously. "You thought they wouldn't want help from a janitor." Darnell laughed under his breath, sharp and bitter. "They don't even see me as a janitor. They see me as the black kid who's always in places he shouldn't be." That line didn't need to be explained. Hensley understood. Too well. The older man looked around again, this time with deeper reverence. He noticed tiny details now, how the books were categorized by topic and difficulty level, how the whiteboard scraps were neatly cleaned after each lesson. Every corner held evidence of thoughtfulness, dedication, talent, and all of it, hidden under mop handles and stacks of unused school supplies. "I served with people who couldn't read maps but could disarm a bomb in under 30 seconds. Hensley said quietly, "And I knew guys who looked like they'd never survive war, but turned out to be geniuses. Under pressure. You remind me of them." Darnell tilted his head. "How?" "You're not supposed to be the one with answers. But you are. That scares people." A silence passed between them. Not awkward, reverent. "You're not here to shut this down, are you?" Darnell asked, voice small now. "No," Hensley replied. "But you need to know. You're not invisible anymore. The assistant principal thinks you're stealing answers. Granger wants to call the board." Darnell looked like the air had been sucked from his chest. "I didn't cheat. I've never even looked at test files. I don't even have access." "I believe you," Hensley said. "But believing you won't stop them from spinning this into something it's not." Darnell stood and reached for the laptop. He opened a folder labeled Submissions, and there they were. Over 200 personalized video explanations, each one named after the type of student request. Hard problem with graph. Help before quiz. Don't get this word problem. And so on. No names, no faces, just help. "I didn't do this to prove anything," Darnell said, voice starting to crack. "I just didn't want to watch people fail when I knew how to help them." "Is that wrong?" Hensley shook his head, a lump forming in his throat. "No. It's what teaching is supposed to be." The alliance between them formed there, wordless but unshakable. The veteran and the boy, the soldier and the scholar. Two men pushed to the margins for different reasons, now bound by truth. As they left the closet, Hensley placed a hand on Darnell's shoulder. "This place? It stays between us. For now. But we're going to figure out how to protect it." That afternoon, Darnell resumed his cleaning duties with quiet precision, even as rumors began to swirl. Someone said he was being investigated. Another student whispered about that janitor who knows everything. But no one had proof. No one could pin it down. And then Logan posted. It was subtle at first. A thread on the student forum, the same one where the ghost tutor once offered help. The title read, "The Invisible Black Genius Walking Our Halls." The post didn't name Darnell. It didn't reveal the closet or the videos. But it praised the anonymous tutor who had saved his grades, taught him math in a way no teacher had, and given him confidence he never thought he'd feel again. Logan described how the school ignored certain students while others quietly carried the weight of brilliance without ever being acknowledged. He ended it with a line, "Sometimes the smartest person in the room is holding a mop." The post exploded. By midnight, it had over 1,000 shares, screenshots on Instagram, reposts on Reddit. Students from other schools chimed in, claiming they too had mysterious online tutors who helped them late at night. Some speculated it was a college student, others said it had to be a teacher using a pseudonym. But one thing was consistent. They all believed this invisible tutor wasn't just smart, he was changing lives. Comments flooded in. "Whoever you are, you saved my semester. I've learned more in 2 videos than a whole year in class. Realist educator in the building, and he's not even on payroll." The school's administration didn't respond. Not yet. But the walls were starting to creak. The next morning, Darnell walks into the faculty lounge to quietly grab cleaning supplies and finds a teacher holding a printed copy of the viral post, whispering, "We need to find out who this is before the board does." The story didn't just spread, it detonated. By sunrise, Crestwood High's parking lot buzzed with news vans, camera crews, and reporters holding microphones like weapons loaded with assumptions. Headlines pulsed across local channels and social feeds faster than rumors could catch up. High school janitor secretly tutors honors students, hidden genius or academic risk. Anonymous math prodigy exposed. School under scrutiny. Students credit ghost tutor. District silent. But the one headline that stung the deepest, the one Darnell saw plastered on a news ticker while emptying bathroom trash bins, read, "Custodian with unknown background, accessing student work. Parents concerned. Not brilliant. Not gifted. Not self-taught. Generous or genius. Unknown. Background. Concerned." The coded language was loud. By 8:10 a.m., the school office inbox was drowning in messages. Frantic subject lines from parents who had never set foot inside a parent-teacher conference before now. How did this happen? Why was he allowed near student computers? What if he had access to girls' lockers too? This is dangerous. Do something. Dangerous. That word was repeated, again and again, all before Darnell had spoken a single word to the media. Inside the main office, Principal Wexler paced in circles, tie crooked, cheeks flushed. "We need to control the narrative," he muttered. "We need to get ahead of this. We need to reassure families." "What families?" a secretary whispered. "The ones who only care now because this kid might be smarter than their kid?" Assistant Principal Granger's voice snapped. "He had unauthorized access. That's the line. That's what we stick to. Unauthorized." Another word chosen to erase brilliance. Meanwhile, halfway down the hallway, Logan was pulled from class. 2 administrators stood waiting outside the door, eyes cold but rehearsed. "Logan Hayes, come with us. Bring your bag." He followed them into the office, unsure if he was in trouble or being asked to explain. His heart jumped when he recognized the printed version of his post, the one he'd written to honor the anonymous tutor, now held like evidence against him. "You violated the school's media policy," Granger announced. "You've caused unnecessary disruption." "I didn't name him," Logan said. "I didn't expose anyone. You brought attention to an unstable situation." She cut in. "Unstable," he repeated. "You're calling a student teaching calculus unstable. We are suspending you for 3 days effective immediately." "For what?" "For interference with school operations." Logan laughed, not from humor, but disbelief. The school wasn't operating in the first place. Not for him. But they didn't hear him. Or they didn't care. The suspension wasn't the only fallout. Later that afternoon, Darnell was called into the principal's office. Again. This time, they didn't pretend to offer clarity. "We're temporarily relieving you of custodial duties," Wexler said stiffly. Darnell sat straight. Not angry, not scared, just tired. "What does that mean?" he asked quietly. "It means until we complete an internal evaluation, you're not to enter classrooms, teacher spaces, or technology access areas. He blinked. So I can't work. That's correct. And I can't attend class either. That's correct. So I can't be here, as a student or staff. Wexler shifted. We're sorting that out. It's temporary. Temporary was a lie wrapped in a waiting room. Darnell stepped out into the hallway, where students whispered loudly, the kind of whispering that was meant to be heard.
That's the kid, right?
Bro, he was tutoring AP Calc. Why was he even in those rooms? I heard he hacked the school system. My mom said it's dangerous, like he could be planning something. Planning something. As if numbers were weapons. As if tutoring was a crime. He walked past them all, silent, straight-backed, carrying nothing, because everything had already been taken. That night, the story hit national Twitter. Some praised him, calling him brilliant, resilient, extraordinary. But others, they called him a fraud, a thief, a risk, someone who didn't belong in academic space. Attempts to defend him were drowned by the louder truth. People were more comfortable believing a black boy had somehow stolen genius than believing he was one. At home, Darnell sat at the kitchen table while his mother, still in scrubs, tried to breathe through the situation. The house phone kept ringing. Journalists, activists, strangers. You want me to call someone? She finally asked, voice trembling. A lawyer? The NAACP? Someone from church? He shook his head. They haven't even asked me anything yet. You're on the news, baby, she whispered. And nobody's asked you a single question. He looked down at his notebook, the same one he'd carried since 7th grade, filled with equations, proofs, identities. A brain on paper. A life measured by work no one believed he could do. What if it doesn't matter, he murmured. What if they already decided what I am? She reached for his hand, tired, ink-stained, tired. You tell the truth anyway. Across town, Hensley sat alone in his small apartment, laptop open, re-watching the interviews. He stared at Wexler saying the word investigation, with a practiced calm. He watched Granger carefully avoid saying anything about race. He saw how every statement implied danger, without stating it. And in a late-night news segment, a parent stood outside the school saying, "We don't know what kind of environment he comes from. We don't know what else he's capable of.
Not genius.
Not talent. Capable." Hensley closed the laptop, breathed slow through his nose, controlled, steady, soldier breath. The kind meant to keep you functional when surrounded by things meant to break you. He turned to the confiscated school laptop, the one he had quietly borrowed from the IT office before they erased everything.
He knew what to look for now.
He opened the district's digital student record system, not the version teachers saw, the one buried 4 access levels down. Administrative only. Board only. He searched one word. Whitaker. The system hesitated before loading. There it was, the original flagged file from his middle school placement. Notes from testing assessments. Letters from teachers. His score reports. A perfect math assessment. 2 grades skipped in recommended placement. A gifted track approval. Stamped. But below that in bright red, reclassified due to behavior risk. Do not enroll in upper tracks. Behavior risk. No disciplinary record. No incidents. Nothing. And yet next to the note, a signature. Not from a teacher. Not a counselor. A school board representative. Hensley leaned closer. The signature matched the same name on every district letterhead from the last decade. He didn't stop there. He kept scrolling. Until he found more. More names. More reclassification. All with one thing in common. They were all black. He understood then. This wasn't a glitch. It was a pattern. It was intentional. A system designed to keep kids like Darnell in closets, instead of classrooms. Hensley sat back, pulse heavy, cold, controlled. This was bigger than tutoring. Bigger than a closet. Bigger than a janitor uniform. He clicked one button. Download full record. The file saved. He stared at it. Hatred simmering not for Darnell, but for the people who would rather bury brilliance than let it exist in the wrong skin. The truth was no longer locked away. And if this went public, everything would change. The next morning, an anonymous audio file is leaked to the local press. A recorded school board meeting from years ago, where someone can be heard saying, "We can't have too many of them in the gifted program. It affects the district image." The leaked audio ignited something in the town that no test score ever could. It wasn't just the voice, dry, authoritative, male calmly stating, "We can't have too many of them in the gifted program. It affects the district image." It was the silence that followed in the clip. No one challenged him. No one objected. The school board had sat in that meeting, complicit in the strategy to limit black excellence, not by performance, but by perception. The file spread like wildfire. Local radio shows played it on loop between segments. News anchors lowered their voices when quoting it, as if the racism in the recording was somehow more dangerous if spoken too clearly. Hashtags flooded social media, erased by design, let Darnell learn, gifted while black. Students across the state posted their own stories of being denied advanced classes, despite qualifying scores. But none were as visible as Darnell Whitaker. By the end of the week, he had become a national symbol, not because he asked to be, but because his silence had been so loud for so long. And now that people were finally listening, the noise was deafening. He wasn't interviewed at first. The media preferred to speak about him. Educators speculating on what might have gone wrong. School board officials claiming the recording was taken out of context. And pundits arguing over whether he was an exceptional case or a fabricated narrative. Even as truth poured out in documents, test records and statistics, the story kept being bent. But Darnell? He kept tutoring. In the same closet, using the same donated laptop. He logged on nightly and posted breakdowns of calculus concepts. Students, some from other states, now sent in problems asking for help. He answered as the Whitaker method, a name someone on Reddit had coined. He didn't respond to praise. He didn't chase credit. He just did the work. One evening, while recording a video on implicit differentiation, his mom came in with her shoes still on, hairnet sliding off, eyes red. "Turn that off for a second," she said. Darnell paused the video. "Everything okay?" She didn't answer right away. She walked into the small living room, sat down, and stared at the carpet like it might have answers. "I went on camera today," she said finally. "Outside the hospital, one of those local news crews stopped me." He turned, slowly. "What did you say?" Her voice cracked before the words came. "I told them the truth. I told them how I begged that school to test you, how I sat in that office with your third-grade teacher and said he's not bored, he's ahead, and they just nodded, smiled, and told me, we'll monitor him." She wiped her eyes. "I told them how they never followed up. How by 7th grade you were doing algebra alone in the back of the class because they didn't have the resources for a special plan. How the principal said you didn't participate enough. How they called your quiet non-engagement, but never once did they ask what you needed." Darnell looked at her, eyes full but dry. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," she whispered. "They erased you on paper, Darnell, but I'm done being polite about it." That clip of her crying into the camera, calling the system calculated, not broken, aired that night. And with it came the backlash. Fox News commentators dismissed her as emotional. Right-wing blogs dug into their family history, publishing a mugshot of Darnell's uncle from years ago. To imply a pattern, anonymous callers left voicemails at her workplace, suggesting she was raising a manipulator. The narrative fractured. Some people saw a genius boy robbed of his future. Others saw a black teen getting too much attention. Some asked why he hadn't just transferred schools earlier. Others said he was using race to get ahead. But Darnell stayed quiet, until the envelope came, delivered by courier. Embossed seal, heavy parchment paper inside. On behalf of the Chancellor's Academy of Mathematics and Innovation, a full scholarship, private housing, personal mentorship, a fast track to university placement. An offer too perfect to be real. Except for one clause, tucked near the end. Recipient agrees not to publicly speak further about past educational institutions in relation to this matter. We support moving forward, not backward. It was one sentence, but it weighed more than all the others combined. He read it 3 times before sliding the letter across the table to his mother. "What do you think?" he asked. She read it, said nothing. Then, after a long silence, "It's a beautiful trap." He looked at her. "They want you," she said, "but not your truth." She wasn't wrong. The next day, a representative from the academy, a well-dressed man with glasses and a voice like velvet, invited Darnell to a quiet coffee meeting downtown. "You're exceptional," the man said, "and we think you deserve the kind of support our institution can provide. The kind of support the public system clearly failed to give." Darnell sipped water. He hadn't touched the latte. "But I noticed the part about not speaking on the district," he said. The man leaned forward slightly. "Just a formality. We believe in building futures, not litigating the past." And what if my future depends on making sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else? The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'd suggest using your brilliance to inspire, not accuse. That's how real change happens. There it was, the polished version of stay quiet, if you want to succeed. That night, Darnell walked through Crestwood's empty halls. Not as a janitor, not as a student, just as someone retracing footsteps, trying to understand how the same building had been both prison and proving ground. He stopped at the closet. He opened the door. The air still smelled of dry markers and bleach. The posters still hung. The laptop still glowed. He sat down, opened a fresh document, and wrote, "They tried to keep me from learning. Then they tried to stop me from teaching. Now they want me to forget. I won't." He hit save. The next morning, Darnell receives a second envelope, this time from a local civil rights attorney, titled, "Possible Class Action, Systemic Academic Suppression of Minority Students." The envelope was thick, the kind that felt heavy even before you opened it. Not from weight, but from what it meant. On the front, a law firm's name embossed in matte gold. Inside, a clean, precise letter drafted by a civil rights attorney, whose name Darnell vaguely recognized from the news. The headline of the letter wasn't poetic, just surgical. Potential class action, systemic academic suppression of minority students. The legal jargon danced between bold claims and soft disclaimers, but the message was unmistakable. There was a pattern, provable, documented, widespread, of racial filtering in Crestwood's advanced academic programming. Darnell wasn't an anomaly, he was a case study. The attorney was seeking plaintiffs, people who had been quietly buried like he had. But before he could even consider that fight, the other offer still loomed brighter, shinier, and far more immediate. The Chancellor's Academy, a private institution revered for launching STEM prodigies into Ivy League schools, had offered Darnell a full ride, elite mentorship, access to graduate-level labs, and personal guidance from tenured professors. No more janitor's closets. No more floor polishers. No more hiding. Except for one detail. That clause, still sitting in bold text on the second page, was non-negotiable. The student agrees to refrain from public or legal engagement involving the Crestwood Public School District or any affiliated institutions during their enrollment at the academy. A muzzle, dressed up in scholarship paper. He stared at the sentence for the 5th time, hearing it echo in his mind like a threat masquerading as opportunity. That night, he called Mr. Hensley. The old veteran answered after one ring. "You read it?" Hensley asked. "Yeah," Darnell said. "I don't know whether to be honored or insulted." "They're scared," Hensley replied. "They know what happens if you stay public. They're offering you the fast lane so you'll stop drawing the map."
Darnell sighed into the phone.
"But what if that fast lane is the only way out? What if I take this deal and use the platform to help more people later?" Or Hensley said, his voice firm now. "What if you take their deal, and the next Darnell Whitaker gets buried deeper because you stayed quiet?" The silence that followed wasn't passive. It was alive. A moment stretched by morality. "I can't fight everything," Darnell whispered. "You don't have to," Hensley said. "You just have to decide who you're fighting for." It wasn't a decision he could make overnight, but time wasn't something the world was giving him. Outside Crestwood High, protesters had started showing up. Some waved signs supporting Darnell. Others carried flags not of unity, but of resentment. "Keep politics out of our classrooms. Stand with our teachers. No more division." The media tried to paint it as two sides of the same coin, concerned citizens on both ends. But Darnell saw the truth clearly. Only one side was armed with hate. And it wasn't just verbal. One afternoon, as students left school, a man with a megaphone yelled, "This isn't about education, it's about indoctrination." A white parent on the opposite side shouted back, "He's just a kid." The man didn't flinch. "He's not a kid. He's an agenda." The police formed barriers. Cameras flashed. But the damage was already taking root.
Darnell hadn't asked for any of this. He had solved problems in silence, helped people who never even thanked him. And now every headline twisted his story into something else, something that either needed to be silenced or saved. The next day, his mother found a note taped to the front door. "You don't belong here. Take the deal. Disappear." She didn't show it to Darnell at first. She just folded it, tucked it into her purse, and doubled the locks on the door. But he noticed her eyes, more tired, more distant, and he knew. By week's end, the pressure fractured something in him. He walked into the hallway of their small apartment.
at 2:14 a.m. Unable to sleep, unable to breathe. The letter from the academy sat on the kitchen table next to his mom's mug. Half-empty tea. Cold. Forgot. He sat down staring at both. And for the first time in days, he cried. Not loud, not angry. Just long, exhausted, silent tears. The kind you learn to hold in, until no one's looking. The kind that don't change anything, but feel like a necessary surrender. A deal like that would give him safety. The kind he'd never known. No more surveillance. No more suspicion. He could learn without hiding. Live without fear. Maybe even thrive. But it came with a cost. And that cost had a name.
His.
He thought about Logan, suspended for speaking up. His mom ridiculed for demanding better. Hensley, risking his pension for a kid who wasn't even in his class. And the others, those names in the legal brief, the forgotten ones. The buried. That morning, a different kind of letter arrived. Smaller, handwritten, no seal. It was from a girl he'd never met. A student from another district. My brother never got to finish school. He was like you, quiet, smart, too smart. They moved him around until he gave up. But then he saw your videos. He's studying again. Thank you. The handwriting was shaky. The signature at the end, Mia, 9th grade. Darnell closed the envelope slowly. Hands steady now. Later that night, a sound shattered the quiet. Glass. A sharp, clean smash, like a threat being delivered in crystal clarity. Darnell ran to the living room. A brick lay on the floor, surrounded by shards of window. Attached to it in red marker was a note. You should have stayed in the closet. His mother screamed. Darnell just stared, not in fear but in knowing. This wasn't about calculus anymore. It never was. As police cars pull into the parking lot, Darnell's phone buzzes with a notification. Breaking. School board schedules emergency closed-door meeting over potential lawsuit. Contingency plan in development. The living room smelled like fear and broken glass. Police tape stretched across the shattered window like a warning to hope itself. Officers spoke in low voices, snapping photos, jotting notes. One of them, the younger cop with nervous hands, asked Darnell the same question twice before realizing the boy hadn't moved since they arrived. Darnell stood barefoot on the hardwood floor. Blood dried on the arch of his left foot from where a shard had sliced him clean. His eyes weren't on the brick. They were on the note. You should have stayed in the closet. Even now, in the safety of the moment, after, he didn't feel safe. Not because of the wound that was already clotting. It was the echo of the message. Not the words, but the intent behind them. They hadn't thrown that brick to silence him. They'd thrown it to remind him that stepping outside of his assigned place, even intellectually, was dangerous. The trauma didn't shout. It whispered. It lingered. And the next morning, it exploded into the streets. Students arrived at Crestwood High to find protesters lined up along both sides of the entry gates. On one end, black students and allies wore "Let Darnell Learn" shirts, duct tape over their mouths to symbolize his silencing. On the other end, a group of angry white parents held up signs reading, "Stop the division. Education, not accusation. We support our schools." The local news vans were back, microphones extended toward anyone willing to speak, though few spoke honestly. Some teachers didn't show up. Others wore neutrality like armor, hoping silence could keep them employed. Inside the building, Principal Wexler gathered staff in the library for what he called a tone-setting emergency meeting. "We are not to take sides," he said sharply, as if the issue was two equal arguments colliding. "We must preserve order. Students walking out of class will receive demerits. Teachers must remain impartial during instruction. The focus must return to academics." Someone raised their hand. Mrs. Lanning, a history teacher with graying braids and a spine like steel. What part of this isn't academic? A student was erased from the gifted system and attacked for speaking truth. What am I supposed to be neutral about? Wexler stiffened. "You're supposed to teach, not editorialize." The room went quiet. Meanwhile, Darnell didn't return to school. He couldn't. Not with his name circling the internet like wildfire. Not with the school board issuing carefully sanitized statements like, "We take all incidents seriously. We encourage civil discourse and due process. We are reviewing our placement procedures." They said everything and nothing. But not everyone stayed silent. Logan Hayes hadn't stopped thinking about the post, or the brick, or the fact that the school had suspended him for honoring someone they'd discarded. That afternoon, While clearing out his locker, still under suspension, he found something wedged between two old books, a wrinkled envelope with a gold sticker seal. His name wasn't on it, but curiosity won. Inside was a certificate from a statewide math competition, dated 2 years prior. It was issued to Darnell Whitaker. Placed first place, regional division, signed by 2 officials. No doubt it was real. But when Logan checked the school's archives, nothing was listed under Darnell's name. The competition had no public winners database. The school's website had listed a different student that year, someone whose GPA, Logan knew, didn't match the competition's usual expectations. He brought the certificate home, scanned it, and sent it to 3 people. Mr. Hensley, his parents' attorney, Darnell. Within minutes, Hensley replied with 2 words. Found it. Because tucked inside the school's private files, the ones Hensley still had access to thanks to his security clearance, was a note attached to Darnell's application from that same year. Recommend reassignment of award representation to alternate student for PR optics.
PR optics.
They hadn't just buried Darnell's potential. They had stolen his win. When Darnell read the message, he didn't get angry. He didn't cry. He simply sat back in his chair, closed his eyes, and remembered that day. The competition hall. The applause. The moment he handed the medal back because the school said it had to be sent for official engraving. It never came back. Now he knew why. The next day, Logan's parents, fueled by the injustice, held a press conference. In front of camera lights and under the heat of an unforgiving sun, Mr. Hayes stood next to Logan and spoke clearly. My son was suspended for praising intelligence. A student was targeted for excelling in silence. This isn't education. This is erasure. They announced they were suing the school for wrongful suspension and for contributing to a hostile academic environment. The suit named administrators. It named board members. And for the first time, the district's veneer of calm began to crack. But still, Darnell stayed silent publicly. Not because he was scared. Because he knew something bigger was building. Inside the community, lines were being drawn. Teachers whispered to each other about what they'd seen over the years. About the black students whose applications never made it through, the meetings where placement didn't feel right, and the subtle suggestions that it's better to avoid ruffling the parent base. The truth wasn't a flash. It was a slow leak. And now, it was flooding the town. The school board scheduled an emergency session. Closed door. No students. No press. No parents. But someone recorded it. In a blurry video leaked online, board members were heard discussing how to mitigate the damage. We need a scapegoat. If we fire Granger, maybe this goes away. We cannot let this turn into a federal audit. They weren't trying to fix the problem. They were trying to survive it. The video went viral within hours. By then it was no longer about whether the system was flawed. It was about whether anyone in power had the courage to fix it. Darnell sat in his room, notebook open, headphones on. He was working on a new project, one that combined his tutoring methods with a digital platform that could track student progress and alert educators to brilliance being overlooked. He wasn't just surviving. He was building. Still, despite the noise, the praise, the lawsuits, and the threats, no one had asked him the most important question. What do you want? And he didn't yet know how to answer it. That night, a private investigator hired by Logan's legal team discovers something hidden in the school's storage archive. A locked filing cabinet, marked non-standard placement requests. Inside, dozens of names, all black, with red stamps reading DNP do not promote. The cabinet was old, the kind that squealed when opened, its hinges tired from years of holding secrets. It sat in the far back corner of Crestwood High's archive room, behind old prom banners and water-damaged textbooks no one had touched in years. The private investigator, a quiet woman named Jolene Moore, worked in silence, wearing gloves, careful not to disturb the contents more than necessary. She had been hired by Logan Hayes' legal team to verify claims of academic suppression. She hadn't expected to find a cabinet labeled non-standard placement requests. Inside were dozens of manila folders, each stamped with the same red acronym, DNP, do not promote, each attached to the file of a black or brown student. Darnell's was there. So were names of others. Some long since graduated, others who had dropped out, and many whose files ended without conclusion. One document caught her breath. A faxed copy of a math competition entry form from 3 years prior. Handwritten notes in the margin read, "Do not submit. Reassign winner credentials to JT." Image control. No need for controversy. It was dated one day after Darnell won the regional division. Jolene scanned the file, emailed a copy to Logan's attorney, and sealed the cabinet again. But it was too late for sealing. The leak was already in motion. Back at home, Logan read the facts with shaking hands. The initials JT belonged to Jordan Templeton, a then freshman from a wealthy family, now a rising senior with a glossy transcript built on accolades he hadn't fully earned. Logan forwarded the evidence to Darnell without a word. Attached was a simple message. They stole more than your seat. They stole your future. Darnell sat in silence after reading it. His hands didn't tremble. He didn't break down. He didn't pace or curse. He just stared at the file, his mind sorting through the memory of that day. He remembered the competition hall, the smell of dry markers and printed tests, the judge's handshake, the smile on his mom's face when she heard the news, the moment his name was called, the medal that never came home. It hadn't been a clerical error. It had been an erasure, and now he had proof. The next step came naturally. It had to. Logan set up a meeting with civil rights attorney Angela Rowe, a litigator known for exposing discriminatory practices in education systems. She read the files with a practiced eye, flipping pages while already drafting a legal strategy in her mind. "This is a pattern," she said, voice low and steady, "and it's systemic. We have more than enough to file a class action suit. This isn't about one boy being overlooked. This is a district protocol dressed up as policy." Darnell nodded, but said little. Angela looked up. "You understand what this means? If you go forward, it won't be quiet. They will come after you harder than ever." "I know," Darnell said, "but I'm tired of surviving brilliance in the dark." Within a week, word of the potential lawsuit reached the school board. Their calm veneer cracked into chaos. Emergency meetings were scheduled behind closed doors. Lawyers were flown in. Emails were encrypted. The superintendent issued a public statement that said nothing and apologized for even less. But behind the scenes, hush offers were made. 3 families who had publicly voiced support for Darnell received quiet visits from district representatives. Offers of scholarships, school transfers, academic reevaluation, the kind of deals meant to buy silence before it turned into testimony. None accepted. Not anymore. One morning, Darnell's mother found a formal envelope slipped under their apartment door. No stamp. No return address. Inside, a letter offering her son a $50,000 scholarship from a district-affiliated Future Excellence initiative. At the bottom, a clause requiring Darnell to withdraw from any ongoing or future legal discussions involving the school district. She didn't show it to Darnell. She burned it in the kitchen sink. "They don't get to pretend to care now," she said to herself, her hands steady over the flame. Meanwhile, Darnell continued tutoring. He recorded new lessons, now including sections titled Equity in Education and Understanding Systems. He spoke not only of derivatives and limits, but of limitation itself, the kind imposed not by intellect, but by institutions. Students from across the country began following him. Some sent messages of thanks. Some sent their own stories of being denied. Some just said, "You make me feel seen." Then came the email. It was from a producer at Truthwire, one of the country's top investigative journalism programs, known for its primetime interviews and deep dives into injustice. The subject line read, "Request, primetime interview offer for Darnell Whitaker." Inside, it praised his courage, offered him a 30-minute televised special, a chance to inspire millions, to highlight the brilliance of underserved students, to rewrite the narrative. But there was a caveat. Subtle, but firm. "We'd like to ensure the message stays focused on education, not politics. Our producers request that Darnell wear formal professional attire, preferably a blazer or sweater, and refrain from discussing racial bias directly, to avoid alienating audiences. Dress the part, dilute the truth, inspire but don't offend." Darnell read it twice, then read it aloud to Hensley, who sat across the table, eyes narrowing. "They want you polished," he said. "Sanitized. Digestible." Darnell nodded. "They want the story, not the stain." "What are you gonna do?" Darnell looked at the laptop screen, then at the stack of notes he'd written by hand. Quotes, names, dates, data. His truth, unvarnished. "I'm gonna tell the whole story," he said. He replies to the producer with one sentence. "Only if I get to wear the janitor uniform." The studio smelled like cold metal and manufactured importance. Darnell sat in a makeup chair under ring lights, his janitor uniform neatly pressed, the Crestwood High logo still stitched over his heart. A young assistant with a headset smiled too brightly as she dabbed powder across his cheeks, muttering about shine and shadows and how the camera could be unforgiving. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't even angry. He was still like the center of a storm. Still like someone who had already decided what mattered, no matter what came next. In the corner, the producer flipped through cue cards, nodding toward the host, a well-known anchor with a million-watt smile and a reputation for feel-good injustice stories, the kind where victims come out shining and villains are vague enough not to offend sponsors. Before they went live, the producer approached Darnell and crouched slightly, her voice just above a whisper. "So here's the flow," she said. "Keep it uplifting. Stay with your personal journey. We want people to feel inspired, not weighed down. Avoid politics. Let's focus on your genius, not the controversy." He didn't answer. She hesitated, then added, "Oh, and when she compliments your articulation, don't be modest. Just smile. You've earned this." He nodded once, not in agreement, in awareness. He had seen this performance before, in documentaries, in press pieces, in stories about black kids who beat the odds and became palatable heroes. The trick was always the same: clean up the narrative, package the pain, sell the genius, but never ever talk about the systems that caused the pain in the first place. The countdown began. Red light on.
They were live.
Tonight we're joined by a remarkable young man, the anchor beamed, whose story is not just going viral, it's igniting a national conversation about brilliance, resilience, and the power of self-belief. Darnell offered a polite smile, hands folded in his lap. The blazer they'd offered still hung unworn in the dressing room. She launched into the segment with energy. Darnell Whitaker, or as the internet has dubbed him, the custodian calculus prodigy, is here with us tonight. Darnell, welcome. "Thank you," he said, voice calm, deliberate. "You're articulate, poised, incredibly humble. It's just amazing," she gushed. "Now tell us, how does someone go from pushing a mop to solving advanced math problems most adults can't even begin to understand?" There it was. The framing. Not why were you mopping in the first place. Not how does a system bury talent like yours. Just the fairy tale, tragedy rewritten as inspiration. "And never stopped learning," Darnell replied. "Even when the system stopped seeing me." The anchor smiled, but it wavered. "And what do you say to those who might feel uncomfortable with some of the more, sensitive parts of your story? The accusations of bias or unfair treatment. Don't you think focusing on the positive is more productive?" Darnell looked directly at the camera. "I think it's only positive because I survived it," he said. "Not because it was fair." A pause. A flicker of unease behind the anchor's smile. "Well, what matters is where you're going now, right? You've received scholarship offers, media attention, community support. What's next for you?" "I'm building a platform," Darnell said, "for students who don't get seen, who've been passed over because of how they look, where they come from, how they Let's stay focused on you for now." The anchor interrupted, her voice sweet but clipped. "You're a beacon, and I think our viewers want to know how you stay so grounded. Even after all the fame." Darnell forced a breath. "I'm grounded because I'm still in the same community that tried to bury me." The anchor chuckled nervously. "You mean metaphorically, right?" "No." The silence that followed was palpable. The segment wrapped quickly after that. A few light questions, a closing nod to his remarkable attitude, and a wide camera shot of the two of them sitting side by side, as if equality could be staged under studio lights. Darnell left the building without waiting for the post-show wrap. Back home, the episode aired across the country, the edited version, his full answers. The words racism, bias, and erasure removed.
The clips that aired made him sound grateful, obedient, safe.
The internet lit up. Some praised him. What a role model. So respectful. So humble. See? We just need more kids like him. Not angry. Just hardworking. Others called him a sellout. Another one who got his moment and forgot the people left behind. Why didn't he call out the system harder? And then came the backlash from the other side. This is why politics don't belong in schools. He should be grateful they even gave him a job. Darnell didn't respond to any of it. Because it wasn't about the comments. It was about the game. No matter what he said, they were going to shape it, polish it, shrink it. He hadn't lost control of the narrative. He'd never been allowed to hold it. The next morning, he walked into Crestwood to return the classroom keys. They had officially suspended his custodial access. Not because of wrongdoing, but because the media attention had become a distraction. Mr. Hensley met him near the front office, his usual coffee in hand. His face was pale, lips slightly purple. Darnell noticed it immediately. "You okay?" he asked. Hensley waved it off. "Just didn't sleep. Too many emails. Too many people trying to spin this thing like it's fiction." Darnell handed him the keys. They took out everything in the interview, sanitized it. Hensley took the keys, stared at them for a moment, then said, "You said it where it mattered. The kids are listening. That's who you speak for now." But before Darnell could reply, Hensley swayed, just once. Slightly, then collapsed. The coffee cup hit the tile floor and rolled in a circle before tipping over. Teachers rushed. Someone screamed. Darnell knelt beside him, shaking him, calling his name. Hensley's eyes flickered, distant, struggling. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They asked about history, medication, stress levels. Someone from the district quietly pulled Darnell aside. "He's been under review for taking sides." Darnell didn't answer. He just looked at the man who had believed in him before anyone else did. The man who told the truth when everyone else played safe. The man now being carted out on a stretcher. That evening a message arrives in Darnell's inbox, from an unknown account, simply titled, "They're not done." The hospital room smelled of bleach, plastic and beeping machines. Mr. Hensley lay unconscious, tubes taped to his arm, monitors blinking with steady indifference. His body, once solid, dependable, almost immovable, now looked small against the sterile sheets. Darnell stood at the doorway with his mother beside him, shoulders stiff, lips pressed into a line too tight to speak. The nurse had told them he'd collapsed from cardiac stress compounded by exhaustion. The unspoken part was clear. He'd been fighting battles that weren't his, and it finally caught up. "They're calling it a medical incident," the nurse had whispered earlier, "but people don't fall over for no reason." Darnell stared at Hensley, the only adult who had ever looked at him and seen something more than a label. The man who had opened doors, literal and metaphorical, without expecting anything in return. He should have been resting at home, or spending his final working years in peace. Instead, he'd been placed under review, interrogated by school officials for inappropriate student alliances, all because he dared to vouch for a black boy who knew calculus better than his curriculum. Now he was in a hospital bed, and Darnell was holding the weight of his silence in his hands. When he left the hospital, a crowd had already begun gathering at Crestwood's gates. What had started as a trickle, a few students making posters, Logan organizing a social media page called Rise for Hensley, had turned into a movement overnight. Hundreds stood with duct tape on their mouths and cardboard signs in their hands. "Truth isn't political. We are the curriculum. Education, not erasure. Let him speak. Let us learn." It was the first time Darnell saw faces he didn't recognize fighting for him. Not just his friends, not just students of color, but athletes, science nerds, drama kids, freshmen with trembling voices, and seniors with loud ones. They weren't waiting for change anymore. They were demanding it. The school locked its doors. Classes were canceled until further notice. Teachers were told to conduct asynchronous learning. But no one logged in. Every click online led to footage from the protest. And at the center of it all, a folding podium made of cafeteria tables stacked on crates. They were waiting for Darnell to speak. He didn't want to.
Not out of fear.
But because the words felt like more than just sentences now. They felt like weapons, and if he aimed them wrong, even by an inch, the wrong person would get hurt. But then Logan handed him a mic and said, "You didn't put us here, but you helped us wake up." So he stepped forward. His janitor uniform still on. No blazer, no polish, just Darnell. No longer a secret, no longer a ghost. He looked out at the crowd, phones raised, eyes wide, and said, "I didn't ask for this spotlight. I didn't break the system. I just refused to disappear inside of it." He paused. The silence wasn't empty. It was reverent. "They told me I didn't belong in honors classes, that my test scores didn't count, that I wasn't engaged enough. But what they really meant was, I wasn't the kind of student they wanted to succeed." The crowd erupted. But Darnell raised his hand. "I'm not angry anymore," he said, "because I've studied enough math to know when a system gives the same wrong result, over and over again, it's not broken. It was built that way." Gasps. Phones surged higher. "You want to know why Mr. Hensley is in a hospital bed?" Darnell's voice cracked now. Because telling the truth in this school cost something, and he paid for it with his body. A pause. I don't want apologies. I want reforms. I want audits. I want names taken off doors, if those names kept students out of classrooms. I want a school that teaches students to solve problems, not become them. By the time he stepped off the makeshift podium, the internet had already made him a headline again. Darnell Whitaker, from janitor to justice voice. Student speech goes viral. The system isn't broken, it's designed. But this time there was no editing, no spin. Because someone in the crowd, a teacher who hadn't spoken up before, live-streamed the whole thing. Unfiltered, raw. The truth, finally louder than the noise. That night, Darnell sat at his laptop surrounded by letters, posters, emails from students around the country. Then, a new email. No subject line. No name. Just one attachment. Project Gate. Confidential minority quotas. He hesitated. Opened it. Inside, PDFs of internal memos, spreadsheets, board meeting summaries. And one file stood out, dated 6 years ago. Titled Demographic Projections for Gifted Program. Recommend a ethnic balance caps. He clicked. The document laid it out in corporate speak. To preserve community perception of fairness and avoid triggering performance anxiety among dominant demographic families, we recommend minority representation in the GATE program remain under 20%. Overrepresentation may lead to political backlash or reduced funding from local PACs. There it was, in black and white. What Darnell had suspected. What Hensley had feared. What everyone had whispered, but no one had proven. This wasn't neglect. It was strategy. Racism dressed up as data. He read the document twice. Then forwarded it to Angela Rowe, the civil rights attorney. Then saved it to 3 separate hard drives. Then sent it to Logan. 5 minutes later, Logan texted, "We're going to burn the whole damn lie down." The next morning, Angela Rowe holds a press conference announcing, "We are filing a federal lawsuit against Crestwood School District under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And we have the documents to prove intentional racial suppression." Angela Rowe stood at the press podium, her posture unflinching, one hand gripping the stack of printed documents that had been encrypted less than 24 hours earlier. Behind her, a row of former Crestwood students, Black, Latino, Southeast Asian, stood shoulder to shoulder, each holding a photo of themselves in cap and gown, or in work uniforms, or holding the test scores that had been ignored. The backdrop read, "Justice for the Gifted." "Today," Angela began, her voice echoing through the crowd of reporters, students, and educators, "we are exposing what may be one of the most structurally racist education policies to surface in recent U.S. public school history." She held up a document stamped with the district seal and dated 5 years prior. "This," she said, "is Project Gate Guided Academic Threshold Equilibrium." That's the name they gave it. But what it really stands for is racial gatekeeping. The crowd murmured. She continued, "These documents confirm a systemic program operated under the guise of academic stability, but designed to suppress the presence of minority students, especially Black students, in gifted and advanced tracks. Not because of merit, but because of manufactured perception." The evidence was damning. Each file laid bare how the school district had categorized students based not only on test scores but on subjective cultural compatibility metrics, coded language for race, family income, and perceived behavior. The documents revealed internal correspondence that discussed balancing optics, parental comfort zones, and oversaturation concern. A full spreadsheet showed data entries with fields like test scores, 98th percentile, teacher recommendation, positive, cultural adjustment index, too high risk, final placement, general education, custodial apprenticeship. There it was, Darnell's file. Not just denied placement, but rerouted deliberately into a hands-on support track despite outscoring every benchmark. Across the country, news stations cut into regular programming to report on the scandal. Hashtags exploded again. Project Gate. Suppressed by design. Gifted, Black, and blocked. But the most chilling discovery wasn't Darnell's record. It was how many came before him. A spreadsheet spanning 20 years showed patterns too obvious to ignore. Students of color consistently rated lower in subjective engagement scores. A metric with no defined criteria, left entirely up to teacher discretion. The notes next to many of these students were vague, sometimes outright offensive. Distracted by home instability. Too quiet to gauge aptitude. Good work ethic. But not GATE material. might make peers uncomfortable in group settings. And then the deeper twist. Some of the reassigned students had been used to fill school support roles, unofficial internships cleaning classrooms, distributing supplies, or tutoring quietly under faculty supervision, all while being denied academic advancement. They were building the system that excluded them. When Darnell read that last line, his throat tightened. He hadn't just been robbed of opportunity. He had unknowingly been enlisted to uphold the very machine designed to silence him. The day after the press conference, protests erupted outside the school district building. Parents who had once defended the system were now demanding resignations. Teachers who'd stayed quiet were scrambling to rewrite their legacy. Students demanded audits of their placements. Inside the chaos, Darnell sat in a classroom where it all started, the one where he'd first cleaned whiteboards with unsolved equations. But this time, he wasn't alone. A black woman with a sharp bob haircut, glasses perched low on her nose, entered quietly. She wore a faded faculty ID that hadn't been scanned in over a year. Her name was Mrs. Harlow, a retired math teacher no one had heard from in a while.
"I heard what you did," she said, placing a stack of dusty binders on the desk. "I've been waiting 20 years for someone to do it."
Darnell looked up. "You were part of it?" "No," she said. "I tried to fight it, but I didn't have proof. Only instincts." She opened one of the binders. Inside, copies of test scores, recommendation letters, internal memos she wasn't supposed to have, all documenting students who had been quietly pushed out of the gifted system. Some files had red X's on them. Others had the word flagged stamped over the top. "These are students I taught," she said, flipping through the pages. "Most of them are adults now. Some made it. Some didn't. But all of them were denied what they deserved." She tapped one page.
"This one?"
"She's in prison now. But she used to stay after school solving geometry proofs just for fun." Another page.
This boy? He had a photographic memory. They said he struggled with teamwork. You know what that meant? He didn't laugh at the right jokes.
Darnell ran his fingers over the pages, each name a ghost of what could have been. "I kept them," Mrs. Harlow said, "because I couldn't sleep otherwise. I knew one day someone would come who wasn't afraid to burn it all down." She stood. "And when you do, bring them with you." Darnell looked up, confused. "The students?" he asked. "No," she said. "The paper trail." The next morning, Angela Rowe added Mrs. Harlow's documents to the lawsuit, expanding the claim into a federal class action case. The district released another statement. It was longer this time, wordier, full of legal jargon and vague promises. But no one was listening anymore, because the proof was out. The blueprint had been exposed, and suddenly, districts across the country were being asked, "Do you have your own version of Project 8? The ripple was turning into a wave. Still, amid the growing attention, Darnell remained focused. He wasn't chasing fame. He wasn't looking for headlines. He was looking for justice and restoration. Restoration of records.
Of names.
Of futures. He sat down that evening and began writing a letter, not to the media or the superintendent, but to the students on those old pages. To the boy flagged for being too intense. To the girl unfit for leadership. To the child, better suited for hands-on work. He wrote, "You weren't broken. They just didn't know what to do with your brilliance." As he finished, another email came in, this time from a national education watchdog group, requesting to interview you about creating a national equity audit program. "We want your insight." But before he could respond, his inbox lit up again, a message from an address he didn't recognize, with one subject line. "I worked inside Project 8. I have video." The video was still downloading when the knock came at the door. Not loud, not frantic, just steady. 3 intentional taps, like someone who knew the weight of arrival. Darnell opened it to find Miss Clara Jennings, a retired math teacher whose name he'd seen in passing on staff plaques, but never in person. She stood small in stature, but firm in eyes, the look of someone who had held truth too long inside her body, and was finally ready to let it surface. "I heard what you're doing," she said, voice steady but cracked. "I should have spoken sooner, but I brought what I saved." She held out a binder, so worn the edges had frayed into soft fabric. Inside were test scores, placement records, grade reports, notes, the kind that should have been stored in official databases, not hidden away in a retired teacher's garage. "These were my students," she said, flipping pages with delicate care. "Brilliant, focused, scoring in the top 5%, and yet," She tapped a red stamp on the corner of each page. Placement deferred. Insufficient recommendation. Not ideal cohort fit. Page after page. Year after year. Every student with top scores. Every student black. Darnell ran his finger along one name. DeAndre Willis. A kid he vaguely remembered. Quiet. Kind. Always reading manga in the hallway between classes. He never got to Algebra 2, Ms. Jennings said. They put him in consumer math instead. He thought it was his fault. Another page. Maya Reed. Test scores 99th percentile. Notes does not show leadership potential. She's working retail now, Miss Jennings whispered. Each page was a stolen future. She closed the binder. They didn't just fail you, Darnell. They formatted the system so you would never even be seen. And in that moment, Darnell understood. He wasn't the exception. He was the proof. By that afternoon, Miss Jennings' binder wasn't just evidence. It was a spark. News stations picked it up. Hashtags surged again. Families demanded audits. Former students flooded social media with memories.
They said I had attitude.
I was told I needed social maturity. My mother cried when they said I wasn't ready. One voice videoed herself holding an old ribbon. I won the county science fair. The school erased my placement and replaced my name with someone more presentable. I thought I was crazy. I thought I misunderstood. But I didn't. They lied. The school district, finally cornered, released a public statement. We deeply regret any perception of unfairness or discrimination. We remain committed to equity, moving forward. Not an apology.
Not a confession.
Just another sentence engineered to mean nothing at all. Meanwhile, something else had shifted. Not online, not on paper, but in Darnell himself. He was no longer reacting. He was leading. Every university with a STEM department began emailing. Some offered full scholarships. Some offered accelerated admissions. Some sent private messages from deans using words like promise and potential, and corrective opportunity. But all of them, all came with strings. We'd love for you to join us, but avoid discussing your ongoing legal involvement. You would be such a positive example of resilience if we focus on your personal journey. No need to keep revisiting the systemic language. It's polarizing. Even when praising him, they wanted him silent. The New York Sentinel called twice. Education Today called 5 times. CNN emailed for a primetime panel. And every request contained the same subtext. Make yourself inspirational, but not threatening. Impressive, but not indicting. Exceptional, but only you, not the system that created you. It was the same trick, packaging him neatly, removing the sharp edges, turning survival into branding. He refused 3 interviews, ignored 8 emails, blocked a campus recruiter who pretended to accidentally show up at his neighborhood library. He wasn't playing their game. Not anymore. Instead, he sat at his desk late into the night, working on something larger. A platform to track academic suppression patterns across districts. A public open database where students could submit stories, upload records, identify patterns. He named it Scorekeeper. A place where brilliance couldn't be buried quietly. Logan joined the project as technical support. Angela Rowe as legal consultant. Miss Jennings began scanning her binder, page by page, uploading it into digital permanence. Every stolen score was getting archived.
Not erased. Not hidden.
Not forgotten. A movement had formed. Not around Darnell the student, but Darnell the witness. And still, the media camped outside his home. A camera crew knocked at 6:30 a.m. A reporter shouted his name through a cracked car window. Drone footage hovered above his building, zooming in on his bedroom light at 3 a.m. He stayed inside, unseen, watched it all silently, refused to be turned into a prop. One night, his mother stood at the kitchen counter, hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea, gone cold. You're changing things, she said, but her voice held more ache than triumph. I'm trying, he answered. You are, she said, and it's too heavy for one person. He thought about that. Thought about Hensley in the hospital. Thought about Miss Jennings carrying a binder like a wound. Thought about the students on the spreadsheet who never even knew they were erased. That's why I can't stop, he said. She nodded. Not proud, not fearful, just understanding. As if she finally saw the difference between a son fighting for his future and a son fighting against the past. Later that same night, long after midnight, he heard a soft slide paper against wood at the front door. He opened it to find nothing outside. No knock, no voice, no shadow in the hallway. Just an envelope, thick, cream-colored, unmarked. He brought it inside, tore the seal slowly. Inside was a single sheet. His real academic record. Not the altered one. Not the purged one. The original. Honors algebra. Completed. Honors geometry. Completed. Advanced STEM placement. Recommended. Gifted program eligibility. Approved. All dated years before. All hidden. All denied. There was no note. Just truth. Returned like a ghost. At the bottom of the page was a second name. The counselor who signed the original placement approval. She hadn't worked at Crestwood in years. She disappeared after accusing the district of discrimination, and now she wanted to meet. The page trembled in Darnell's hand, not because he was afraid, but because something inside him finally shifted. Something that had been clenched for years, tightening with every denial, every dismissal, every forced silence. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't a theory. It wasn't a pattern inferred from whispers or pieced together from erased digital records. This was proof. His proof. Stamped. Signed. Dated. The transcript listed his middle school placement. Honors algebra. Honors geometry. Advanced STEM. Gifted program eligibility. Approved. All years before the school pushed him into janitorial hours under the lie of a computer glitch. He stared at the signature line, eyes fixed on it like a wound he could finally point to. His mother's name was there, looped in ink. Except, it wasn't her handwriting. Not even close. He had watched her sign medical forms, rent notices, permission slips. Her pen strokes were neat, sharp, contained. This signature was loose, slanted, written by someone who didn't care if it matched. Forged. His acceptance had been signed on her behalf without her knowledge, and then buried. He carried the document to the kitchen, where his mother stood, arms folded, coffee growing cold in her hands. "Is that?" she began, voice thinning. He laid it on the table. She didn't touch it at first, just stared. Her eyes scanned the lines as if reading a document from another timeline, a version of her son's future that had been stolen and sealed away. Then she sat, slowly, carefully. She traced her name with one fingertip. "That's not my signature," she whispered. "I know. They told me he wasn't ready," she said, voice breaking. "They said there were no test results. They said the placement was never submitted." Darnell didn't speak. There was nothing to add. The paper said everything. She took a breath, long and slow, the kind used to steady someone carrying too many truths at once. "I believed them," she said. "I believed the school over my own child." Her voice didn't break into tears. It broke into shame. "No," Darnell said. "They built it to be believed. That's the whole point." That night, his legal team gathered in Angela Rowe's office. The transcript lay in the center of the table, surrounded by printouts from Project Gate files, student testimonies, and the binder Ms. Jennings had preserved through decades of quiet defiance. Angela didn't pace. She didn't rant. She sat, studied the document, and said, "This is the smoking gun. This proves they destroyed records," said Logan, who had insisted on being there. "They altered test placements. They forged signatures. They blocked entry because of race and covered it with paperwork. And now we have it," Angela said. "All of it." She didn't wait 15 minutes. She filed a formal federal complaint with the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. Not a petition.
Not a request.
A demand. Citing Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, accusing Crestwood School District of systemic racial suppression through fraudulent record tampering. The complaint included the Project Gate documents, the forged signature, the manipulated transcript, the math competition certificate, the non-submitted test scores, the DNP files, and more than 50 sworn student statements. It didn't just expose a corrupt program, it indicted a machine. 2 days later, the Department of Education responded. They weren't asking for clarifications. They weren't delaying. They weren't dismissing it as local jurisdiction. They were launching a civil rights investigation into the entire Crestwood district, and they were doing it publicly. News cameras descended. Not just local.
National.
Reporters used new language now. Not alleged, not claimed, but documented, proven, systemic. Classes at Crestwood were suspended indefinitely. The superintendent resigned. Half the school board went silent. The other half hired lawyers. People stopped calling Crestwood a high-achieving district. Now they were calling it something else. A case study in discrimination. A blueprint of suppression. A warning. The town changed overnight. Parents stopped bragging about school rankings. College counselors canceled visits. Real estate agents rewrote listings, no longer highlighting the district as a selling point. Crestwood wasn't an example anymore. It was a caution. And in the center of it, somehow calm, somehow steady, stood Darnell. Not shouting, not burning, not collapsing, just refusing to look away. He walked the halls of the now quiet school, not as a janitor, not as a student, not as a ghost, but as someone reclaiming ground that had always been his. Classrooms sat empty, desks unused, whiteboards still marked with equations he once cleaned at night. He paused at one of them and wrote, "If you fear brilliance, you don't deserve it." He didn't wait for applause. He wasn't speaking to the system anymore. He was speaking to whoever came after. Universities reached out again, this time with urgency. Calls, messages, letters.
Video invitations.
They offered full rides, early acceptance, personal mentorship, housing, flexibility, but always with a clause, spoken or unspoken: come to us. Leave the fight behind. One chancellor said, "You've made your point. Now it's time to move forward." A dean from an Ivy League school said, "We'd love for you to represent academic excellence, not hardship." A private STEM institute said, "Imagine what brilliance you could achieve if you focus on your future instead of your past." He heard every word, and everyone carried the same message. "We want your genius, not your truth." He rejected 7 offers in silence, not because he didn't want to learn, but because he wouldn't trade justice for a seat at a table built on the same broken logic. Journalists still camped outside his home. Some wanted a soundbite, some wanted contrition, some wanted spectacle. He gave none. Instead, he kept building Scorekeeper, the platform he'd started late at night, the one designed to track academic inequity nationwide. He wasn't fighting for himself now. He was building something meant to outlive the lawsuit. Outlive the moment. Outlive him. Days later, just when the storm threatened to become a new quiet, another envelope arrived. Not thick,
Not legal.
not threatening,
Beautiful. Bah.
hand-delivered, from the Ellis Foundation for Education Innovation, a national private foundation known for funding work that transformed learning, not just access to it. Darnell opened it. Inside was a letter. "We see not just a scholar, but a system thinker. Not just brilliance, but blueprints. We don't want you to fit into the future. We want you to build it." They were offering him something different. Not admission, not rescue, not silence. A partnership, a full fellowship, a development budget, a team, funding in the millions. But not for his education. For his tutoring model, his platform, his vision. No clause, no gag order, no stay inspirational, not political. Just one line at the end: "We do not want you to shrink your voice to fit our comfort." He read it twice, then 3 times. His mother stood in the doorway, watching. Not excited yet, not relieved, just waiting. "What is it?" she asked softly. Darnell looked up. "A chance to build something better," he said. She nodded once. "You're ready." He believed her. He turned the letter over and saw a handwritten note on the back. "We want to fund Scorekeeper. Full scale. National launch. Let's talk." The blueprint had always lived in Darnell's head, scribbled across notebook margins, whispered in late-night voice memos, coded line by line after school on borrowed laptops. But now it was real, tangible, scalable. He called it the Closet Classroom, a name that sounded soft, almost quaint, until people learned where it came from. A janitor's storage room with a folding chair and a laptop held together with electrical tape, the same space where he once tutored anonymously, solving calculus problems under flickering ceiling lights after sweeping the very classrooms he was excluded from. Now, it was an online platform, sleek, intuitive, unapologetically bold in its mission: to identify, elevate, and protect the brilliance of underserved students, especially those pushed out by racist academic systems. But Darnell didn't build it alone. He used the Ellis Foundation's grant, not for press or promotion, but for people. He hired a team of former students like him: Black, Latino, first-gen immigrants, neurodivergent minds, low-income youth who had been told, maybe college isn't for everyone. He made them tutors, mentors, and architects. He didn't ask for degrees. He asked for experience. Every lesson was designed to do more than teach. It decoded the bias embedded in traditional curriculum, transforming how students approached math as not just logic, but power. Each topic began with this header: "This concept was once withheld from you, Here's how we reclaim it. The day he launched the public beta, Darnell didn't call a press conference. He didn't tweet a countdown. He didn't film a hype video. He just posted a single sentence on the site's homepage. "We've been gifted all along. They just never planned for us to find each other." Within 24 hours, 12,000 users signed up. Within 48 hours, Newsweek wrote a feature. By the end of the first week, the demo video, just Darnell explaining slope using a cracked whiteboard and a second-hand webcam, had racked up 2 million views.
Then came the messages.
A mother from Kansas. "My son was told he'd never pass pre-algebra. He finished your calculus module in 3 days." A girl from Mississippi. "I didn't know I was smart until now." A retired teacher. "This is what schools were supposed to be." Even the same media outlets that once sanitized his story were now begging for exclusives. The anchor who had cut his segment weeks before sent a personal apology and requested a second chance to do it right. Darnell declined. He wasn't interested in make goods. He was interested in momentum, and that momentum turned into policy. As the closet classroom expanded, school districts in 3 states reached out for licensing, not for control, but for training, for data, for access to the platform's embedded equity tracking dashboard, which flagged schools where students of color were disproportionately underrepresented in advanced tracks. Then something happened that no one expected. The Crestwood School Board president resigned. No press statement, no farewell, just a resignation letter leaked to a local blog. The truth was always there. We just built walls around it. Her departure triggered a domino effect. Several other board members followed. Teachers stepped forward to testify under subpoena. The district's internal review turned into a full-blown state audit. And what the audit uncovered became the basis of a new legislative bill, introduced at the State House under a single title, the Darnell-Whitaker Equity and Placement Act. The bill demanded racial bias audits in academic tracking, criminalized the deliberate suppression of gifted student records, and required schools to publicly report demographic breakdowns in honors and advanced programs. For the first time in state history, lawmakers were not just debating school funding, they were debating who gets to be seen as gifted. Darnell watched all of it unfold from a small apartment, with peeling wallpaper and a donated Wi-Fi router. He refused every offer to move to the city. Refused to leave his neighborhood until his platform reached every zip code like his. But even as the spotlight grew, he remained disciplined. He didn't smile for every camera. He didn't pose for every article. He didn't rebrand as a youth founder or tech visionary. He called himself what he had always been: a tutor, an advocate, a student. He visited classrooms in person, especially the forgotten ones. The windowless trailers, the underfunded community centers, the detention center study halls. He walked in wearing his janitor uniform, on purpose every time. "Uniforms don't measure worth," he told one classroom of 6th graders. "Neither do transcripts. You were not behind, you were just misfiled." They listened. They always did. But on the eve of the full national launch of the Closet Classroom, something shifted. It was late, past midnight. Darnell sat alone at his desk, reviewing error reports and last-minute bug fixes, his eyes heavy from 3 straight days of prep. His phone buzzed once, a blocked number. He almost didn't answer, but something, instinct maybe, told him to pick up. He tapped accept. A pause, then a voice, clear, steady, and unmistakably professional.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes?
"This is a senior education liaison with a White House Office of Public Engagement. The president would like to meet you." Darnell sat up. "I'm sorry, what?" "There's interest in using your platform as a national model. They've reviewed the beta data, the reach, the retention, the results. It's unlike anything we've seen." He couldn't tell if he was dreaming. The voice continued, "We'd like you to visit, present your vision, discuss scaling. We're prepared to provide federal support, but we want to hear it from you."
Darnell looked at the wall above his desk.
Still taped there was the very first whiteboard problem he ever solved anonymously. And now he was being asked to explain it to the nation's highest office. The voice paused again. "Would you be willing to come to Washington?" Darnell exhaled. Not overwhelmed. Not giddy. Just resolute. "Yes," he said. "I will." As he ends the call, his inbox pings with one new message. Subject line: "They tried to erase you from history. We're making sure they never do it again." Smithsonian Archives team. The heavy doors of the Oval Office closed quietly behind Darnell Whitaker. For a moment he stood there in the hush, his janitor uniform pressed open beneath the tailored blazer someone insisted he wear. He was a teenager from a small town in Indiana, pushed into a closet classroom, and nearly erased, now standing in the nerve center of power in the United States. The irony didn't escape him. President Morales rose and extended his hand, firm and unexpected. "Darnell," he said. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me," Darnell replied. His voice was calm, controlled, refined by every moment he had lived. They seated themselves at a long, polished table. Around them sat education advisors, tech analysts, equity researchers, people used to solutions that fit into quarterly reports, budgets, and hashtags. Darnell opened his laptop and clicked into his presentation. The closet classroom data dashboard pulsed across the screen, a live map of underserved students, real-time progress metrics, narratives that algorithms couldn't hide. "This," he began, "is not just a platform, it's a roadmap to equity." The problem wasn't just access, it was invisibility. You don't fix a system by giving opportunities, you fix it by ensuring no brilliance goes unseen. One advisor, Ms. Caldwell, leaned forward, her fingers tapping a silver pen. "My son," she said quietly. "He struggled with math. We tried everything. Then he found your anonymous videos. Within weeks he improved. He said, 'This man understands me.'" Her voice cracked. "Thank you." It wasn't applause. It was acknowledgement. And in that moment, Darnell felt the weight of every student he had tutored in secret. Every hours-long session in a janitor's closet. Every ignored test score and buried certificate. He walked them through the equity dashboard, the red flags for schools with underrepresentation, the heat maps of students ready for advanced tracks but assigned remedial courses, the stories behind the statistics. The room listened. One senator asked, "How do we scale this nationally?" Darnell answered, "By not scaling just technology, but by building culture, by rewriting expectation. We elevate tutors of color, not just students. We turn closets into classrooms. We give visibility to the invisible." The president nodded. "This is what we meant when we said reform. Not incremental, transformational." Darnell left Washington not with cheers, but with a promise. "I will not let another student go unseen." Back home, Crestwood High's janitor's closet, once silent, unused, tucked behind shelves of mop buckets, was transformed. With the support of the Ellis Foundation and community donations, it became the Whitaker Room, a dedicated study lab for underrepresented students, equipped with whiteboards, laptops, and Darnell's tutoring videos on loop. He walked through the doors one morning and found students already there, quiet, focused, solving problems that once excluded them. They looked up at him as he entered and saw a fellow student, not a distant figure. "Welcome," he said simply. "You belong here." Down the road, a bill he had inspired, the Whitaker Equity and Placement Act, became law. Schools statewide were audited, transcripts reopened, students who'd been rerouted were reassessed, scholarships were seeded for resilience, not just grades. And each year a new scholarship was awarded in his name. To the student who overcame silence, invisibility, and the assumptions of not enough. Not for who got the highest score, but for who refused to be unseen. But transformation isn't clean. It's messy. It's persistent. It's rooted in places people forgot. One Friday afternoon, Darnell sat alone in the Whitaker room. He scrolled through emails, teachers requesting resources, district officials asking for white paper collaboration, students sending problem sets. His phone buzzed with notifications. He looked at the screen and saw, "New message, rural school district invited to pilot program." He clicked it. The message read, "Our school has no advanced math teacher. We have one computer. Our students are ready. Will you help?" He paused, then typed back, "We're coming." He looked up at the room's whiteboard. It still bore the first equation he ever filmed. Limtix 32, UY20, Limtix 32, UY20, Limtix 30T, UY20, 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 UY20. He smiled. Because what started with one problem, one secret lesson, one shot at being seen, had become a movement. And as he walked out of the room, he left the door open. For the next student who felt invisible. For the next potential erased. For the next future they said didn't exist. Across the country, a young girl in a rural school opens her laptop, watches a video labeled "For the Genius They Couldn't See," and begins solving equations, not because someone told her she could, but because someone proved she already could. If you've ever been told you don't belong, if you've ever watched someone brilliant get silenced just because of how they look, then you already know. This isn't just Darnell's story. It's all of ours. Type yes if you believe every student deserves to be seen. Subscribe if this broke your heart.